2017 academic session on behalf of the Faculty of the Social Sciences. It is the 11th inaugural lecture for the Department of Economics and the second in the field of petroleum and energy economics. The first inaugural lecture from Petroleum and Energy Economics was delivered in 2001 by Professor Akin Wayemi. Its inaugural lecture was aptly titled, Nigeria's Fractured Development, the Energy Connection. It is indeed a great privilege to stand on the shoulders of great teachers and economists who have delivered inaugural lectures from the Department of Economics. Coincidentally, Professor Akin Wayemi introduced me to the exciting field of petroleum and energy economics when he gave it as one of the preconditions for supervising my PhD thesis in 1990. My relationship with energy economics was anything but love at first sight. It was a love that grew gradually. But after the first few years of cautious courtship, I'm proud to say that the love relationship has blossomed and it is thriving. It has opened great doors of opportunities and accomplishments within and outside Nigeria. However, can we say the same thing about the relationship between energy and Nigeria's economy? It is the nature of this relationship which has been the major focus of my research and intellectual engagement since 1990 that I stand to present to you today. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, I will in this lecture be addressing the role of energy in Nigeria's economic development process. The relationship between energy and Nigeria's economy is aptly captured in the title of today's lecture as that of a troubled but indispensable relationship. I will be using the institution of marriage to describe the nature of the relationship. Few couples have been fortunate to have flawless and great marriages. Majority have experienced the normal cycle of marriages, love at the beginning, the period of difficulties and challenges. But the outcome of such troubled marriages often produce varied results. Some divorce, some separation, some a continuous but joyless and unfaithful partnership. Yet others have weathered the challenges to rebuild their marriages into a fruitful one again. However, in a significant number of cases, the great potentials of marriage and the mutual expectations of both parties at the time of courtship and on the day of wedding are largely unrealized, a sort of missed opportunity. If the parties are open enough to consult and obey the advice of a good marriage counselor, the joy may return and the relationship may blossom yet again. Why has the marriage between the energy and economic development in many countries been so great and fruitful? How have the two partners in the relationship played their roles to produce a blissful relationship? Why has the relationship between energy and economic development in Nigeria been so much troubled? Is it really due to spiritual forces, as the former Nigerian Minister of Power boldly declared at a conference in South Africa? There's no doubt that looking at most economic development indicators, the over a century relationship between energy and Nigeria cannot be said to be a totally rosy one. It has been, for the most part, a troubled relationship with patches of happiness. But it is an inseparable union that is solemnized on the famed injunction, till death do us part. Energy economists, of which I'm privileged to be one, as trained marriage counselors, have devoted their careers to exploring how this relationship can be turned around to make it what it ought to be. Understanding the nature of the relationship, energy and economic development nexus. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, let me start this discourse by citing the following quotation that demonstrates the significance of the relationship between energy and economic development. I want to quote, "In the 21st century, we are so dependent on oil, and oil is so embedded in our daily doings that we hardly stop to comprehend its pervasive significance. It is oil that makes possible where we live, how we commute to work, how we travel, even where we conduct our courtships. It is the lifeblood of suburban communities. Oil and gas are the essential components in the fertilizers on which world agriculture depends. Oil makes it possible to transport food to the totally non-sufficient megacities of the world. Oil also provides the plastics and chemicals that are the bricks and mortars of contemporary civilization." Daniel Yergin, 2008. The subject of the relationship between energy and economic development has been a fascinating subject to energy economists. Energy has been a prominent factor in the march of human development. The difference between an urban and rural dweller, or those who live in developed and developing countries, can partly be summarized in the quantum of energy that is available to both parties. Omorogbe 2015. However, economists predictably have not agreed on the magnitude and the exact nature of the relation over time and across levels of economic development. Common areas of debate include but not limited to questions such as, is energy consumption a prerequisite for economic growth? Or, in more technical terms, does energy consumption gradually cause economic growth or vice versa? Is the relationship bidirectional or statically independent? Is the nature of the relationship linear or curvilinear or asymmetric? To what extent is the relationship influenced by temporal factors, level of economic development, governance and institutional factors, quality of political and economic policy, among others? Energy and economic growth in Nigeria, the great debate. The debate on the impact of energy and economic growth process in Nigeria has also been quite intense. Perhaps this debate was invigorated with an influential work by Olomola 2006 and Omola and Adenikinju 2006, which find that energy shock does not have any significant impact on the Nigerian economy. Several studies have since corroborated this finding. Iwayomi Afowe 2011 A and B, Adenikinju 2010, Adenikinju et al. 2011, Babatunde and Adenikinju 2016. However, other studies like Aliyu 2009 and Olubusoye et al. 2016 reports that Nigeria, being an oil-dependent economy, is hugely vulnerable to price shocks from oil market. The conflicting results from this group of studies show that the causal relationships as well as the channels of transmission between energy and economic growth in Nigeria may not be simple as previously thought. On the empirical front, evolving debates have looked at the issues of nonlinearity and asymmetric relationships, which examines the differential effects of positive and negative price shocks and whether the effects of thresholds matter before significant relationship can be identified. More recently, thresholds has explored the use of rolling windows technique to interrogate whether there's a shifting time varying effects of the relationship. See, for example, Adenikinju, Adeyemi, and Adewale 2016, and other studies cited there. In particular, Adenikinju and Olarele 2016, as well as Olarele 2017, show that in the pre-1984 period, the Nigerian economy was modestly affected by crude oil price shocks. However, the post-1984 period revealed more negligible effects of oil price shocks. Moreover, the longer the duration of the negative oil price shock, the more likely is its impact on macroeconomic aggregates. This tendency is not replicated with positive oil price shocks. In summary, there's no doubt that economists will continue to refine their tools in order to provide a unifying theory of energy and economic relationships. In spite of this, there are certain irregularities that we can discern from available data. One is that there's a high correlation between energy consumption and levels of economic development. The following faint photograph of the Earth at night, which many of us have seen, is quite relevant. You can see in that picture that countries in the northern hemisphere where the rich people live, have electricity at night. They sleep with electricity at night. Whereas in the southern hemisphere, where most of the poor countries are, have learned to sleep in darkness. So you can see that in the lower hemispheres, there's darkness. The only exception is South Africa and the gas flaring in Nigeria. These energy economic regularities are summarized in Table 1. And if you go to Table 1, I'll quickly just explain what that table is saying. The table is saying that energy consumption is more important to development than energy ownership or resource ownership. For instance, a 10% increase in electricity consumption per capita will increase GDP per capita by 4.9%, will reduce population living below poverty by 2.6%, and reduce corruption perception index by 3.2%. On the other hand, resource ownership, oil production, for instance, a 10% increase in oil production will reduce GDP per capita by 0.1%, increase population living below poverty by 0.7%, and increase corruption perception index by 0.1%. In other words, there is little or no correlation between resource ownership and economic development. The reality of the relationship and why the relationship has been troubled. The Lord said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make him a helpmate." Genesis 2:18. Nigeria is truly endowed with energy resources, renewable and non-renewable. According to Federal Government of Nigeria 2017, Nigeria's proven oil reserve is estimated at 38 billion barrels, and at the current production reserve ratio, can last for another 40 years. There's also a proven gas reserve of 1.7 trillion cubic feet TCF, with a possible value of 600 TCF. In oil equivalent, this is about 30 billion and 102 billion barrels of oil, respectively. The 187 TCF is sufficient to power 60,000 megawatt plants continuously for 100 years. Hence, this gas resource endowment of the country, if properly utilized, can turn Nigeria into a country with uninterrupted electricity supply, which can meet the needs of several generations of Nigerians. However, maximum electricity generation from the grid in Nigeria up to November 2016 is about 4.6 gigawatts, that is 4,600 megawatts, from an installed capacity of 12.5 gigawatts. The lack of adequate supply of gas has contributed to significant volatility in electricity supply that often range between a minimum of 1.5 gigawatts and a maximum of 4.6 gigawatts in the last couple of years. When we factor in technical losses along the value chain, then delivered electricity from the grid to a country of about 180 million people is barely the equivalent of what medium-sized cities in advanced countries generate and consume. In fact, this is equivalent to 25 watts per person per year, barely enough for one electricity bulb per person. With regards to oil resources, Nigeria in comparative terms in 2014 ranked as the 12th largest oil producer in the world, the 10th with respect to proven reserves, and the 5th largest oil exporter. In the same year, and with respect to gas, Nigeria was the 9th most prolific country in reserves globally, 28 in production, and 25 in exports. In Africa, we hold the enviable position of either the first or second in any of these indicators. Hence, these abundant resources are meant to be a development helpmate. Economists describe economic development as economic growth accompanied by structural transformation. In everyday language, and with specific reference to energy, economic development as a fruit of marriage between energy and Nigeria is supposed to deliver a sustainable high economic growth rate, high employment generation, low poverty rates, a highly literate society with a well-developed and functional social and economic infrastructure. With economic development, Nigeria is not expected to be a generator economy. Electricity supply will not only be available and accessible, but also affordable to the citizens of the country. In addition, economic development will deliver a more balanced regional development, a functional economy where citizens are indifferent between living in the urban or rural areas, simply because the quality of infrastructure in either world is not inferior to each other. Mr. Vice Chancellor, the fruit of the marriage will have included a stable electricity supply on campuses, which will support long hours of teaching and research, resulting in our university system becoming truly world-class, innovative, solving practical societal problems, and producing high-quality graduates. These and others are what energy should have brought to the marriage relationship as a development helpmate. However, as a worthy husband, Nigeria also should have nurtured the wife, the energy sector, with adequate investment, appropriate policy, governance, and institutional structure that is conducive for effective, productive, and efficient operations. It will not have been a relationship where the husband shows up occasionally, as our president famously said, to meet the wife only in the other room. Impact of energy on the economic development process in Nigeria. It is very clear that the marriage between energy and Nigeria has been so much troubled, yet the beginning held so much promise. Electric generation began in 1896, barely 15 years after its introduction in the United Kingdom. In 2015, Nigeria has 17 power generating stations with an installed capacity of 12.5 gigawatts, but with an average daily generation capacity of 3.8 gigawatts. Whereas the United Kingdom, with a population that is 1/3 of Nigeria, generates 85 gigawatts. That's 885,000 megawatts in 2014. Figure 6 is quite interesting because it shows that out of the 12.5 gigawatts of installed generation capacity that we have, 68.8% is idle. Only 30.2 is operational. And what gets to the consumers at the end of the day is just about 50%. With respect to petroleum, the first prospective right for petroleum was given to a British company in 1908. And it made the first discovery in 1922 in Araromi in the present Ondo State, which happens to be my place of birth. The First World War brought an end to the activities of the company. Oil was discovered in commercial quantities in 1956 in Oloibiri in now Bayelsa State. Export started in 1958 with about 5,000 barrels per day. The honeymoon lasted barely till 1980. However, relationships soon ran into troubled waters. The price of oil collapsed in 1982 to under $30 per barrel and reduced further to around $15 per barrel in 1986. The Nigerian economy quickly went to a tailspin that continued until the recovery in 1999. External debt piled up significantly as we did not only spend what we made from oil, but also borrowed against future oil income. Nigeria had our longest price boom between 1997 and 2007, 1999 and 2007. As shown in figures 7 and 8, oil has indeed brought some good fortunes to Nigeria. It provided resources that financed the second, the third, and fourth national development plans. Under these plans, the number of tertiary institutions rose. Roads and bridges were constructed across the country. Nigeria expanded her infrastructure and physical asset base, often with huge projects that later turned out to be white elephant projects. The fiscal linkage of oil with the economy is quite strong. Figure 7 shows the growth in oil export between 1960 and 2013. The jump between 1960 and 1970 is phenomenal. Oil, which accounted for just 9.3% of total exports in 1960, rose to about 97% by 2004 or 2013. The high fiscal dependence of all the levels of government, federal, states, and local governments on oil revenue are shown in figure 8. Between 1993 and 2015, local, state, and federal governments received 15.3 trillion, 19.15 trillion, and 67.06 trillion naira respectively from oil revenue. We could imagine what this would have done in terms of if they have been translated into physical assets across the country. Figure 9 shows the close link between oil prices and GDP growth between 1987 and 2015. The similar statistical independence between the two post-2005 is a combination of better economic management, economic rebasing, which changed the structural composition of the size of the economy as the moderating impact of fuel subsidy, according to Batuda and Adenikinju and Adenikinju relate 2016. However, oil came with its own disease, the Dutch disease, as well as other components of the baggage, like economic distortions, corruption, weakening of state institutions and social capital. However, this accompanying disease could have been prevented or kept at a level where their destructive impacts on our economic development will have been minimal. However, we failed to do the needful, prevent the disease, and therefore have been left to suffer the consequences of our ignorance, or better still, our mute indifference and carelessness. So, commandments for a fruitful marriage, disobedience and its consequences. Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it. Ephesians 5:25. Petroleum ought to be a blessing. It's a good gift from God. It's a facilitator of development. Oil provides so much economic rent that if used judiciously can basically transform the whole country. Cumulatively, Nigeria earned over $1.025 trillion from oil export between 1961 and 2014. Petroleum Nigerians must be pained that the unfortunate elitist policy of fuel subsidy, excessive state interventions in the sector, and the collaboration between state officials and their fronts in the private sector turned the petroleum sector into a caricature of a summer safe. Outside Iran, Nigeria remains the only country within OPEC that imports petroleum products for its domestic consumption. While other countries like Saudi Arabia, Libya, Venezuela not only refine domestically, but have invested in refineries abroad. In 2011, this fuel subsidy cost Nigeria over $8 billion, which was almost a third of the total budget for that year, and 108% of the capital budget for the year. And in fact, the $8 billion was more than the total allocation to health and education combined. As shown in Table 2, there's no link between the country's energy resource endowments and exploitation and Nigeria's global ranking on key economic, social, and institutional indicators. While Nigeria ranks fairly highly in natural energy endowments, sadly on economic factors like per capita income, the country ranks 180th out of 222 countries. In population living below poverty, it ranks 180, and 112th in investment GDP ratio. On social factors, Nigeria's global ranking are equally abysmal. With respect to infant mortality rate, Nigeria has the 10th poorest record globally. In terms of physician density, we are ranked 130th. Hospital bed density, 176th. Life expectancy at birth, we are 210th out of the 222 countries. On governance and institutional factors, the country is 124th on competition index, 136th in corruption perception index, and 115th on index of economic freedom. This ranking shows that although Nigeria is well endowed in energy resources, the wealth has not been translated to benefit the vast majority of Nigerians. Not only this, ladies and gentlemen, the country's comparative woeful performance extends beyond the above. Figures 10 and 11 show Nigeria's comparison of electricity consumption in kilowatt-hour per year per capita for 2003 and 2013, respectively. Nigeria has not only appeared to have slipped back relative to a group of comparator countries. Our per capita electricity consumption, around 152 kilowatt per hour, is below the United Nations prescribed minimum for reasonable quality of life, which is 500 kilowatt hours per capita per year, and the minimum that is required for industrial development takeoff, which is 1,000 kilowatt per hour per capita per year. Another dimension of the troubled marriage is in the area of energy shortages. It is a paradox that despite vast amount of energy resources, Nigeria has consistently witnessed sporadic shortages in energy supply. This clearly reflects in the case of fuel supply, especially between 1991 and 2014. Some of my studies have examined the causes, implications, and solutions to this problem at the micro and macroeconomic levels. See those various studies that are cited there. In a survey we carried out in Ibadan to evaluate the impact of fuel scarcity on informal sector operators in the city, Adenikinju and Follow Bill 2005A found that producers and business operators reported substantial impacts of fuel scarcity on their operations, including higher cost of operations, fall in capacity utilization, decline in sales, fall in profits, and lateness of workers. Ogbonregbe and Adenikinju 2014 showed that there are significant differences in prices across various markets during fuel shortages. The incidence of the legal gains from market imbalance varies across states and products. Kerosene, which provides more opportunity for arbitrage. In other words, those who sell petrol during fuel scarcity, kerosene, are able to make more gains than PMS, which is petrol, to the disadvantage of the poor who consume more of the former. The case of electricity failure is even more serious. Adenikinju, in various studies, investigated the cause of power outages in the Nigerian manufacturing sector. The study found that the low quality and reliability of power supply has forced firms to invest in costly alternative private provision, at times about between 10 and 30% of their initial investment. Further evidences of the troubled marriage are reflected in figures 50A and B and figure 16 for power sector, oil and gas subsector, and for the host communities. I mean, we can see those pictures. Now, where you have those generators used to be the SUB, and those that they have disappeared now, but that is a common, site across the country. And then you can look at the host communities where the citizens of those places have to fetch water from, polluted waters. And then many of us will also be familiar with the long queues, that used to be a regular feature of Nigeria during fuel scarcity. The canon rules of effective energy economy marriages and consequences of disobedience. Oil has its rules in order to derive the maximum benefit from it. Just like God handed the 10 commandments to the Israelites, with consequences for disobedience and blessings for obedience, it is possible to discern the rules of the use of oil from economic theory and from the experiences of country that have successfully transformed oil resources to the benefit of their citizens. I categorize these commandments into 10. Number 1, thou shalt adopt and implement right public policy choice. Commandment 2, thou shalt integrate your oil sector with the rest of the economy by ensuring that energy resources are used to meet local domestic demand first before exported to other countries. 3, thou shalt apply economic principles for efficient management of the energy sector and for pricing policy. 4, thou shalt take care of the sector through adequate investment and providing conducive environment for private investment. 5, thou shalt develop strong institutions and governance structure as important agents of restraint to contain the excesses of oil sector operators. 6, thou shalt protect your economy against opportunistic infections like the dog disease and the resource cost syndrome. 7, thou shalt ensure that the host communities where oil is found, exploit and produce, become partakers of the oil profit. 8, thou shalt not allow foreigners to dominate your oil sector because of divergence of economic interests. 9, thou shalt protect the environment in which oil is produced. And 10th, thou shalt not ignore your first love, the sector that begat your development process. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, in over 27 years of my work in the energy sector, I have called attention to the wrong policy choices we've made as a nation with regards to the energy sector, and there are consequences not just on the sector, but the overall economy. I will now discuss the consequence of the violation of the above commandments. Violation of appropriate public choice rule. One of the critical choices that government has to make is how to spend the booming but transitory income from oil. Oil income can be spent on either investment or consumption. Investment prioritizes the future ahead of the present and involves trading present comfort for future returns. Consumption focuses primarily on the present alone. In Figure 17, we can see the various policy options and the that the government can take. The optimal choice is always to prioritize investment over consumption, given the transitory and volatile nature of oil revenue. As a country, we have not done this successfully. The review preference function of successive governments have always assigned far higher weights to the present than the future. 2, the violation of the second commandment led to the creation of an enclave economy, an oil economy where few people operate, that exists in parallel with the non-oil economy where the rest of us belong. Nigeria is also led with a sector that emphasizes revenue generation rather than economic development. Hence, we have a sector that exports crude oil rather than processing the crude for the domestic use. We export LNG and LPG, while we have no gas to fuel our electricity sector, to power homes, industries, and businesses. And yet, we still import LPG even for our domestic cooking. Nigeria remains a country of paradox, a country that exports what it needs and imports what it has. Application of economic principles in efficient management of the sector. The issue of energy subsidy is sensitive and often divisive. The idea of subsidy in energy economies is conceptually different from its normal use, which defines it as the difference between the cost of production and revenue. In the literature, it is conceptualized as the difference between marginal opportunity cost and revenue. Exhaustive resource theory recognizes that when we take a barrel of oil from the ground, that barrel of oil is gone forever and it's no longer available for the future generation to use. Therefore, we must price that into the price at which oil is sold. So the appropriate price for oil is not the average cost that people often refer to. It is the marginal cost plus the user cost that is incurred because the future generation is denied access to that same resource. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, I spent a significant part of my academic sojourn investigating the role of energy subsidy in Nigeria's economic development process. So my conviction about this is not just starting now. My 1994 PhD thesis, Analysis of Energy Pricing Policy in Nigeria, an application of computable general equilibrium model, began my deep interest on the role of efficient energy pricing on the sector's survival and promoting economic development. It was the first to apply the economic YCG model to examine not just any energy issue, but any economic issue in Nigerian universities. My doctoral thesis and my subsequent work on energy subsidy all show that subsidy is not only inequitable, as it benefits the rich and the wealthy more than the poor, but it's also a major drain on government budget and a major source of corruption. Our studies show that, first, the recessionary impact of efficient energy pricing on the economy is minimal. Second, it encourages more efficient utilization of energy products, thereby reducing domestic consumption, or at least become more efficient in the use of consumption, or the use of the product locally. Third, the inflationary impact of higher energy prices, while they vary across sectors depending on energy intensity, is quite moderate. Finally, We also find in that study that the negative impacts on the economy were reduced and in some cases reversed when the government embarked on compensatory measures to cushion the effects on the economy. Subsidy has destroyed significant parts of the downstream infrastructure. Our depots are gone. The product pipelines are only a shadow of what they used to be. And perhaps more telling is the parallel state of our refineries. The substitution with tankers and road transportation for moving products across the country, instead of the more cost-effective pipeline and rail, have inflicted immeasurable damage on our road infrastructure, on our health, and painfully has led to the significant death of thousands of Nigerians. The collapse of refineries has turned Nigeria to the largest importer of refined products in Africa, and also the largest importer of generators. However, there are several challenges to efficient reforms of the energy sector, and I'm quite aware of that. In the first place, in an environment of poverty, unemployment, and high inequality, it's usually difficult to initiate energy sector reforms that would lead to increase in energy prices and higher energy expenditure for households and businesses. Hence, the issue of equity must play an important role in any successful reforms. Second, there is the problem of transparency and credibility of government officials. This has two perverse effects. First, potential investors are doubtful that government will be committed to reforms and hence hold up on making investments. Second, consumers are also distrustful of the good intention of government to deliver on their promises. The lifestyles of our politicians and their allies make it difficult for people to accept the sacrifice that higher oil prices will bring. With regard to electricity, Adenikinju and Oluwayemisi 2014 show clearly that the introduction of prepaid meters altered the energy consumption behavior of Nigerians. We also find that those with prepaid meters have more confidence in the electricity billing methods, are more conscious of their electricity consumption habits. Most consumers prefer prepaid meters, and interestingly, all electricity consumers, whether they are on prepaid or conventional meters, express willingness to pay more for electricity if public electricity would be more stable and reliable. 4, public investment in the energy sector, in particular the power sector, which until the last 3 years was exclusively under the government, has been inadequate, unpredictable, and uneven over the years. As can be seen in Figure 26, there was virtually no investment during the military era between 1986 and 1988, as no new power plant was built, while existing ones were not refurbished. Yet electricity demand continued to grow over the period, thereby increasing the demand-supply gap. In addition to the low public investment, there's also the low efficiency of public investment in the sector. So we are not just investing in that, we are not just having inadequate investment, but even the investment we made is also inefficient. This is the experience in the power sector, as generation investment ratio declined with increase in public expenditure from 60.7 megawatts per dollar between 1974 and 1998 to 4.2 megawatts per dollar in the period 1999 and 2015. A consequence of the combination of low and inefficient investment in the power sector is a significant rise in private generation, as also shown in Figure 27. Weak institutional and governance structure. The violation of the Fifth Commandment led to the weakening of the institution of restraints on corruption and the capacity of state institutions to ensure that sanctions and incentives played an important role of shaping economic agents' behavior. The weak corporate and state governance led to rent-seeking as a worthwhile pursuit, thus inhibiting genuine wealth creation activities by individuals and even the corporate sector. Potential against opportunity disease, the drug disease, and resource costs. The violation of the Sixth Commandment led to the appreciation of the real exchange rate. Policy stance up to the mid-1980s favored a fixed nominal exchange rate. However, in the face of rising domestic inflation, the real exchange rate appreciated significantly. This made imports cheaper than local products. The inability of local products to compete with cheaper imports affected the demand for the former. The outcome was that agriculture and manufacturing sectors declined. Output and employment for the two sectors also contracted, further narrowed the export and revenue base of the Nigerian economy. Neglect of the oil-producing communities. The lack of focus in respect of the Seventh Commandment showed that we neglected and violated the petroleum communities. We destroyed their culture and land, and we have reaped their tender whirlwind in the forms of kidnapping, pipeline vandalization, political thuggery, and killings. Adenikinju 2002 shows that in most Niger Delta states, even the locus of political power, resides outside the main oil-producing communities. In fact, until the election of President Jonathan in 2011, no indigenous from the Niger Delta has held the highest position in the land. Foreign domination of the sector. The violation of the 8th commandment is manifested in the dominance of the parent sector by foreigners. Nigerian marginal feed operators accounted for just 3% of total oil produced in 2015. Destruction of the environment. Gas flaring, oil pollution, destruction of fauna, to mention a few, are the obvious evidences of the violation of the night rule on the environment. Land in Niger Delta has been raped and violated. Nothing meaningful could grow on it. Fishing, the major occupation, has practically disappeared. Gas is flared in the oil field, releases carbon, sulfur, and other particulates into the atmosphere that adversely affected not just the environment, but also the global climate change. 10, violation of the commandment not to ignore the first love. Finally, we ignore our first love, agriculture in particular, and to a lesser extent, the manufacturing sector, which provided the foundation of the modern Nigerian economy. Ignoring the first love is a major albatross on the country. Now we can neither feed ourselves nor keep our industries working to employ our children and countless youths. At independence, Mr. Chairman, sir, in 1960, in spite of our sole dependence on agriculture, the development gap between Nigeria and comparator countries was low. Our indices of development were not far from those of India, China, Indonesia, Singapore, South Korea, Malaysia, and the like. In fact, Nigeria's GDP per capita in 1960 was higher than that of China, India, and Indonesia. And the gap between Nigeria, South Korea, Brazil, and Malaysia was also moderate. However, fast forward to 40 years after that, South Korea, most of these countries have overtaken Nigeria. Korea's per capita GDP, for example, was 32 times that of Nigeria in 2000, compared to just 1.7 times in 1960. Malaysia was 11 times compared to 3.2 times in 1960. If we had pursued the policies and maintained the caliber of leadership that we had at independence, we could have stayed on a higher growth trajectory and managed to considerably narrow the development gap. Perhaps we have been among the most diversified and developed economies in the world today. The indispensability of the marriage, recommendations for the marriage counselor. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. When marriage vows are broken, there are usually consequences, especially when such violations become persistent. Nigeria has suffered under the affliction from oil. The years of plenty have regularly and predictably been followed by years of famine. In the scriptures, when commandments are broken, there are often consequences. Moreover, reprieve always comes when people return to the path of obedience. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, to heal the troubled marriage between energy and economic development in Nigeria, unfortunately, we do not have any shortcut, but to return to the commandments upon which effective relationship can be built. Below are some of the recommendations that I'm putting forward. First, public policy choices must prioritize investment over consumption. Foiling our economy first before producing oil and gas to grow and create jobs in other economies. Transitory incomes are more efficiently utilized in investment that will continue to yield future stream of income than on transitory consumption. Second, economic principles are more efficient in allocating scarce resources. Appropriate pricing policy in the fuel and electric sectors will deliver an efficient sector that will attract private investment, signal the cost of production to consumers, and save government billions of dollars that can be more efficiently utilized in other sectors. The interests of the weak and vulnerable members of society are more efficiently addressed through well-targeted expenditure on goods and services consumed by the poor, such as public primary and secondary schools, public hospitals and healthcare, scholarships and bursary provisions, and an efficient mass transit system. This will enable the government to achieve both efficiency and equity objectives. Third, the energy sector is highly capital intensive. Hence, we must create an environment that encourages private sector operators to embark on risk-taking ventures with the hope of earning corresponding risk-adjusted returns. Investors dislike uncertainty. The Petroleum Industry and Governance Bill and other associated bills with National Assembly must be passed. In addition, the Electric Power Sector Reform Act of 2005 must be revisited in the light of our experiences with electricity market reforms and lessons from other countries. Fourth, we cannot overstress the importance of strong institutions and regulatory agencies that are independent, autonomous, well-resourced to provide oversight on the sector and correct for market failures. There must be deliberate effort to make the energy sector more transparent, accountable, open, and efficient, so as to gain the trust of the Nigerian public and investors alike. We should have to stop, finding out $32 million, that are kept in private houses. Fifth, as has been shown in previous session, resource costs, including the dot disease, is not necessarily Siamese twins with natural resource ownership. It's an opportunity disease that can be avoided through appropriate macroeconomic management, efficient institutions, and responsible government behavior. Sixth, oil-producing communities must be adequately taken care of. This is what happens under clients with similar environments like that in the Niger Delta. We must also begin to make checks, and I put that in quotes, to host communities as their share of dividend from oil income, so that those who are privileged to provide the resources that have given so much to this country can be direct partaker of its benefits. We are not doing so now. Seventh, the petroleum sector must not just be seen as a revenue earner to the government, but as a development enabler. It must be integrated with the rest of the economy. We must stop the foreign processing of our crude oil for domestic consumption. We must stop the foreign process. Yes, we must prioritize the use of our gas to generate electricity for our people and reap the benefits of stable and accessible electricity for the country. More than 6,000 products can be created from petroleum products. Therefore, we need to challenge our engineers and scientists and the government to also start to see how we can get more instead of just kerosene, diesel, and petrol. 8, we must encourage greater indigenous participation in the energy sector. In spite of the progress of the recent past, there is still a long way to go. There must be more innovative ideas backed up by policies and laws to enable more access for genuine Nigerians investors across the entire value chain of the industry. We should not be content with just being service providers in a sector with so many opportunities. 9th, the environmental situation in the Niger Delta must be urgently addressed. We must stop gas flaring and impose significant penalties for human and non-human interference with oil and gas pipelines. There's no reason why Nigerians who, through no fault of theirs, are born in the Niger Delta should suffer more than other Nigerians who benefit from the resources that have ravaged the Niger Delta communities. In addition, we must pay proper attention to energy data and statistics. The sector is presently shrouded in secrecy and opaqueness. Nigeria cannot give precise information on how much oil it produces, how much is exported, what we earn from oil, how much products are imported, and how much we actually pay on fuel subsidy. Enhanced data quality would doubtlessly improve the reliability of energy elasticities for the Nigerian economy and by extension improve policy formulation. Next, with respect to the power sector, I'm in full support of the privatization of the sector. However, in the light of the performance of the sector post-privatization in 2013, we need to revisit the privatization contract and make necessary adjustments to the responsibilities of all the stakeholders. We must revisit the extant law in the sector. We must strengthen the regulator and utilize not just gas, but all the various energy resources that God has endowed this country with. Finally, I want to strongly advocate more intellectual input in the formulation, monitoring, and evaluation of government policies in the energy sector. In his presidential address at the annual conference of the Nigerian Economic Society, Chief Philip Asiodu observed that the intellectual context in which oil prices had been fashioned was poor. That was in 1979. I'm afraid not much has changed since then. There's an urgent need to reverse the trend. Dependence on foreign consultants is a short-sighted approach to providing a long-term solution to Nigeria's energy sector. Conclusion. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, energy resource is a development helpmate divinely provided for Nigeria. That you have not been able to translate this huge resource endowment into a catalyst for development is not the fault of the benevolent provider. As a country, we have experienced the good, the bad, and the ugly sides of oil. Yet this marriage, if we listen to the trained marriage counselors, can be made to work. I know that there are many noises in the marketplace. It is the responsibility of the government to search out the trained marriage counselors for the good of the energy sector and the society at large. Mr. Vice Chancellor, as I round up to the lecture of today, I must say that I'm fulfilled with the academic journey I started 27 years ago. My greatest accomplishments, in my view, are not the papers I've written, which took their toll on my health, or the generation of students I've trained or influenced to become energy economists, though I'm very proud of them. It is that the Lord used me along with few others to establish the Nigerian Association for Energy Economists in 2006. It is the only African affiliate of the International Association for Energy Economists with a presence in over 100 countries of the world. We shall be celebrating our 10th Unbroken International Conference later in Abuja in April of this year. The second is the Center for Petroleum Energy Economics and Law, a Mercator Regional Center of Excellence for graduate training and research in energy, the first of its kind in Africa. It was a long-nurtured dream the Lord also made a reality. Now we have been able to break down the walls of separation among engineers, lawyers, economists, sociologists, scientists, and other professionals in the energy sector. The truth is that energy has engineering, economics, and finance, sociological and philosophical, as well as institutional, legal, and regulatory dimensions. So it doesn't belong to just one profession. It has to be cross-cutting. Working together as a team will make us see energy in a broader perspective. It's a source of professional pride that one of our first 2 PhD graduates, we started in 2012, Josephine Odura-Sare, not only won the University of Ibadan Best PhD Thesis Award and the Postgraduate School University of Ibadan Award for the Best PhD Thesis in the University of Ibadan for 2015 and 2016 session, but the finding from our thesis is now a government policy being implemented in Ghana. Moreover, our students, the CP Student Association won one of the 4 awards under the 2016 team Total Campus Grants Competition out of 800 universities across the world that participated. And just last week, one of our students, Kende Ogushola Salau, won the best poster presentation at an international conference in Dubai. I also give glory to God that during my time as special assistant to the presidential advisor on energy, I worked with a technical team under Professor Lai Fagbele to develop the 25 years power sector development plan for Nigeria, a fulfillment of the mandate or the challenge that President Obasanjo gave to us. Now, when I see people citing figures on electricity requirements for 2020, 2025, or 2030, I'm fulfilled because these are the outcome of the work that we did. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, I will end by saying that the prosperous future of Nigeria that we all aspire to see may seem long coming, but I believe it is closer than we expect. It will surely come, especially when the energy sector properly occupies its role as a well-nurtured development partner. Acknowledgements. I bless the name of the Father of all creation, the Alpha and the Omega, God Almighty, my Maker and Redeemer for the journeys of these past decades. It has been my constant strength, my helper and defender. To me alone be all glory, honor, and all adoration. I'm profoundly grateful to the Dean and my head of the department for the opportunity to represent the faculty and the department today. I thank all my teachers and colleagues in the Department of Economics. I want to thank all my teachers that are seated here today. I'm really very grateful to you and to all my other colleagues. I'm also appreciative of my friends and colleagues in the faculty and the University of Ibadan, and University for your kind support and assistance over the years. I've had wonderful support from teacher and non-teaching members in the Faculty of the Social Sciences, the Postgraduate School, Bursary, Registry, Jaja, and University campus at large. I thank all members, teacher and non-teacher of my department who are listed there. I also thank the faculty officer and the staff who worked tirelessly to make this occasion what it is today. I appreciate the 10 members of the Alafia State Residents Association, led by Indefatigable Chairman, Engineer Raji, and members of the Executive Council for your support and care. My CP family, you have been wonderful. Words cannot express my deep gratitude to members of the management staff, the over 85 faculty associates and fellows of CPL, the administrative staff, my graduate assistants, CP schools, as well as the present and past students of CP. You share the vision, and your hands have remained on the plow to make the center achieve its divine purpose. I thank you all. I must not forget my Mercator Foundation family, especially my past and present bosses, Professor Gose Kagwere, Professor Aro Derinde, the MGLO, and the support of other people that are listed, Professor and Professor Msomigodu, and others who are listed there. I'm grateful to members of my spiritual family, Reverend Dr. and Reverend Mrs. Lekomba today, and the entire members of Jesus Key Ministries, past and present, Baba and Mama Ajao, and other members of New Covenant Church, including my pastor, and members of the Bashon Center who are here present today. And also all the other pastors who have been closely associated with me over the years. I thank God for your prayers and for your support. I want to thank all my friends, many of who travel far and near to be here this evening. I appreciate your support, and I pray that God will continue to bless and reward our friendships. Some of the names are listed above. I appreciate the relationship I had with the Nigerian Economic Society, Mr. Wotude and Musa Nete, and the two presidents I served under as business manager of the society, Professor Sai Biajai and Professor Samuel Lofi, for your confidence and your trust that you bestowed on me and other past presidents of NEAs. I also thank my NEA and IA family, the president. I want to thank and recognize especially Professor Yika Moregwe, who is also here today, and others who have supported us over the year. I thank my PEP and ARC families. I'm indeed very grateful to you. Engineer Fisoye Delano, who may be watching this now, I'm really very grateful to you. I thank my former and present doctoral students, many of who are my colleagues now. Your name are listed there. I'm indebted to special people the Lord has been to make special impacts in my life in the process. In the presence of Professor Akimbo Adeshomoju, my uncle, who has played the role of father to me since I came to Ibadan in 1983 as a young undergraduate in UI. Professor Anthony Adegulugbe, thank you, sir. Professor Anthony Adegulugbe invited me to Abuja to serve as special assistant when he became the president advisor on energy. Professor Akin Wayemi, who planted my feet on the power of energy economics. Professor Samuel Lofi, who employed me as graduate assistant at SIA. Professor Kasi Gaba recommended me to Professor Jonathan to appoint me as special assistant, and others. I want to thank also Professor Yemagishe George, who invited me to Jesus Key Ministries and reintroduced me back to Christ. I thank you all. I thank members of the editorial boards of the Nigerian Tribune. I also want to thank my family members who are here today. You have been kind and so loving. You believe in me and stood by me over the years. I'm profoundly grateful to you. Amos, Felix, Tayo, Toyi, and Najasi, Bukola, Tokwe, Babatude, Lankeni, Abiodun, and Yanu. I thank you all. The Lord will continue to bless and prosper you. I appreciate my father-in-law, Professor Seyesola, who saw fire to the future to entrust his beloved daughter to me as my wife. After chasing so many who came before me away, the man chased them away so that I can lay hold on this beautiful lady. I thank my brothers-in-laws and sisters-in-laws. I thank all my friends who came in from various universities to be present here today and other various associations who are represented here. I'm grateful to all who assisted me in preparing to this lecture. I'm grateful to you. I want to pay homage to my parents who labored so hard over me. My father, most senior apostle, Dr. Emmanuel Adenikinju, who passed on last year. He ensured that all the children had education. We may not have extra money for new clothes and new shoes, but he ensured we were not chased out from class because of school fees. My mother, Mrs. Margaret Adenikinju Adeshomoju, a mother in a million, who never ceases to pray for us every day. You made so much sacrifice for us, putting your life on the path of danger so many times to protect us. This day is dedicated to you, Mommy. I thank my stepmother, Mrs. Florence Adenikinju, for your support and prayers. I bless the Lord for the wonderful children He gave to us, my baby girl, Tolu, Deji, Daniel, and Victor. I'm really proud of you. I thank you for collectively forgiving me for those early years when I was not around, because I put too much attention to the pursuit of my career development. You justifiably felt my absence. I'm glad you understood later and forgave. I cherish you. You'll be greater than me and your mom. To my lovely wife, Yinka, you are God sent. You are a mother and a wife, a friend, lover, counselor, prayer partner, and so much more. I am astounded by your quiet mien, but strong character and hard work. The Lord has made you a pillar of support for the entire family. It has been a journey of over 2 decades. There are still many years ahead, and with Christ by our side, Victoria Asata. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for coming.